let's think beyond the United States now, that really emphasize Mary as being holy and pure and putting her on this unattainable pedestal for other women, that in those places, spaces, and cultures, women are not as valued. They are not fully accepted into the leadership life of the church. So for example, in the Catholic Church, that's one of many reasons why there aren't any women priests. And so there are still denominations and other churches and such that use Mary because they use Mary as an example of doing what she's told to do, that women should still assume that position and are therefore unqualified for leadership positions.
Dr. Bird writes about sort of that tension between honoring Mary and putting her on a pedestal and having women not be empowered, because you would think that denominations, countries, etc., that honor and revere Mary to the extent that they do, they would also honor and revere women. And
there is like this awe and respect for women, and she refers to this.
Yeah, she says, when a female is placed on a pedestal, this is actually a form of control and of keeping her in her place. So I'm half Mexican. Sarah, I know you know that. But my grandma, her parents were born in Mexico. So she was the first in our family to be born here. The fact that I will have hopefully again a full-time job, but the fact that I have had a full-time job while being married to my husband, it just blows her mind, because he should be out working and I should be taking care of the babies. And Grandma, I'm not having, we haven't even had that conversation. But even things like they live, a good 3.5 hours away. The fact that I can drive myself there is very, I think it's gotten to be impressive to her, but at first it was very, she was very uncomfortable with it. And so, and I know that machismo is a big thing in the Hispanic community, where men need to be the providers. An
example from today, the man in a relationship says that the woman is so valuable or so important that he wants to take care of everything for her. But in doing so, he makes her a kept woman, not one who is empowered. She is often treated as if she would break if touched, instead of being seen for the strong and capable woman that she is. And so, when you think about it, that is a way of controlling. We talk about wanting, we tell these Prince Charming, fairy tale stories to our daughters and such. And ordinarily you would think of that as being look what a gentleman he is. Look how well he takes care of her. Oh, you're such a lucky woman. When in reality, there could be emotional abuse behind that. When you're trying to control someone and trying to limit their agency to make their own decisions and have their own autonomy, then you venture into the realm of emotional abuse.
Well, I think just about in the beginning of relationships, a lot of times, there's that, we call it the honeymoon period or whatever, where everything the other person does is just perfect and they are perfect, and then they fart and okay. Turns out they're a human.
You want to know when Sean farted in front of me for the first time?
I guess that's when you did.
No, it was less than a week after we got engaged.
Oh wow.
like he told me like how many belly aches and like how miserable he was so many times, like while we were dating. And then
Wow.
and then like a week later we're driving in the car and suddenly like all the windows go down and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. And I'm like, did you fart? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, dude. And he was like, do you know how many times I didn't fart in front of you? I'm like, oh, good
I'm
God.
also thinking like this talk about putting someone or a group of someone's on a
Mhm.
pedestal also reminds me just like in general of how we treat different professions or different like associations. Like, you know, seeing a teacher at a bar or knowing like future current pastors with tattoos. It's just like there's still like these preconceived notions that we have of how people who are in certain positions should be.
Should act, should behave, should look, should.
Yeah, and then we should all over ourselves.
Mhm.
And
We're tired of shooting all over ourselves.
exactly.
And then there's a problem I always noticed growing up with, well, I was a daughter of a teacher, but then there was also the PK children,
Right.
and everybody in the church would hold that child so, oh, be more like this child or that child, PK, and you'll be all right. But then if they tumbled, boy, that was a disaster.
Oh yeah, PK kids are always under a microscope, which is why I'm very glad that I'm doing this at this point in my life and my daughters are grown and out of the house and, mostly adult like people, so that they don't have to live under the same kind of microscope that so many other PK kids raised in the church do.
But I had the same problem even as a teacher's child.
Mhm.
I had a certain way I was supposed to behave, and I didn't say this, and I didn't say that, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do that.
Yeah, don't embarrass me. You could
Yes.
jeopardize my job.
Yes.
How much more pressure is that on a kid?
Well,
All right, it is 8:02, so I am going to bless us out of here. We're going to be talking about more women next week. And there's probably some sex in there too. There's the Bible, doesn't talk about women a lot, but when it does, a lot of times it's tied to sex. So, you're going to study the women in the Bible, you're going to study about their sex lives too. So invite a friend. Everybody likes to talk about sex, or at least listen to other people talk about sex.